Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Tech and Tactile podcast, the show that comes around when it feels like it. As always, I'm Cody,
And I'm Michael.
and today we're here to talk about something near and dear to my heart. The 30th anniversary of Resident Evil is today, and I
Indeed.
could not be happier. So, I wanted to just take the time, to talk about the series as a whole, what it means to me, and, talk about some cool stories of showing this lad here where the series started and where it's going. And it's still an ongoing journey in that regard, and it's an interesting journey at its heart, and it's really good. I couldn't be happier, and I couldn't be having more fun doing it. But yeah, Resident Evil, 30 fucking years old.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that great?
March 22nd, 1996.
I mean, I personally, I did not play the first game right away. My first game was the second one. And boy, what a story I have to tell for that one. I mean, I could share all my Resident Evil stories, but I mean, 30 years of survival horror.
Yes.
And I wanted to get into that.
30 years of fear.
People are kind of like, that's a term that's been going around for ages, and people don't exactly understand survival horror. And well, Capcom kind of coined it themselves. That's what they considered Resident Evil to be, survival horror. So, there's been a lot of consensus as to what survival horror really is. And well, according to Capcom, it's limited ammunition and fixed camera angles. Now that's subjective, and people can either take or leave the fixed camera angles. I'm going to get into the whole legacy of what survival horror is and what people think of survival horror and what it means to them, and what people think of the series. Because boy, this is a divisive series.
Yes.
There's I mean, when you've been around for 30 years, your gameplay won't always stay the same. I mean, not everyone's like Mario, where you get your 2Ds and your 3Ds, and all the 2Ds are practically about the same with different mechanics. But Resident Evil has adapted and changed over the years, and kind of wanted to get into it.
Had many a spinoff as well.
Oh yeah. I guess before I start talking about my memories, I mean, I'll go over what brief, basic ass knowledge. I mean, personally, if you're coming for the here for the wealth of knowledge of Resident Evil, I would point you to plenty of other YouTubers who are in the Resident Evil space that would do a far superior job than I ever could.
Shout out to the residents of Evil.
Oh yeah, they're really good. But I mean, yeah. So Resident Evil. Its humble beginnings. It started out as a remake of a Famicom RPG based off of a movie called Sweet Home. And then it evolved into the zombie crawling horror fest that we all know and love today. That's basically its origins. It was going to be a remake of a movie tie-in, and then it, grew. And wow, I'm glad it did what it did. But yeah, Resident Evil. So
the baby of when Fujiwara and Mikami kind of came together after the elements of Sweet Home kind of was emanated from the Famicom in Japan in late 94.
And it's kind of funny. I played Sweet Home, and it has the DNA of Resident Evil before Resident Evil. Like, it has door transitions and everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'd like to talk about how the game how the series evolved. I mean, as anyone would probably know, the original Resident Evils were on the PlayStation.
Yes.
And, well, they had a lot of limitations as to what they could do. So they did this cool little trick that I have been a fan of for 30 years, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And so they wanted to make a game that was in first person, but due to limitations, they came up with a cooler idea where they would create like pictures, little PNGs, and they would stick a character on them, and then you would move between fixed camera angles. They would literally frame each shot that you would go into, and as your character moves, the character would then, switch to another angle to facilitate, the environment that they wanted to show. And it might look simplistic. Uh, it might look like you're like moving around a Mega Bloks looking character, but at the time, I mean, it's pretty
For
good.
the
And
hardware, it was very revolutionary because you got to think it wasn't. Not only was what Resident Evil was built on in its origins per se, it to me it gave me on a personal level is like you like to call me the more of a modern day Resident Evil enthusiast with how kind of like you introduced me to the series growing up and all the memories that we have going through all of these different games and their coined term of the survival horror genre as kind of its own thing, which gave birth to a few different kind of things that like I don't want to be, and I know you for sure don't want to be forgotten to time with what the series made in itself, which is a couple things. So you've got the third person perspectives. Then you've also got things like, we can't never forget tank controls, and we also can't forget the camera angles, which tie into our beloved pre-rendered backgrounds as well.
yeah, I was going to get into that. So for the newbies, the newcomers who have been getting into the series, welcome. You know, it's nice to get newer fans into the series. But if you started getting into Resident Evil with, let's say, 7 and the
Mm-hmm.
2 remake, or any of that, then you would either have played the game in first or third person, or if you played Requiem, if this is your first game, you could choose between first and third, which
Yes.
is honestly really neat. I like that a lot. But that's the series had more humbler beginnings
Yes.
with fixed camera angles and tank
Mm-hmm.
controls, and that is a very divisive topic. I see a lot of newcomers to the series kind of, well, for lack of better words, they just kind of ignore or like undermine the
Yeah.
original games.
I like
And
to give people a mental kind of imagery for this. I like to think of newcomers to Resident Evil, those clips that you see of people trying tank controls for the first time where they just go back and forth through the same door frame 50 times before figuring it out.
yeah, um it is quite interesting, to honestly say the least. Resident Evil, like I was gonna I kind of got turned around, but it's 30 years of horror. It has switched genres a lot of times. So
That it has.
we had our fixed camera angle era, then we had our third person era
Shooter.
with
Yeah.
that still had the tank controls. Resident Evil 4 and 5, I
Mm-hmm.
mean 5 kind of still has it in its DNA, but 4 still had the tank controls. It just pivoted the camera behind your character.
Yeah.
And then you have whatever the hell 6 is.
We don't talk about 6.
Listen, for those people who like 6, I think 6 has one of the best mercenary modes. It's not a bad game. It's just not what I want for a Resident Evil, and therefore we have to agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say,
It
you
became more
know,
of a Call of Duty aspect type of game, unfortunately, in that era.
I gotta say, Revelations did it a lot better. But I'm
Yeah.
getting ahead of
Yeah.
myself. Before I start ranting about, I'm just gonna sit here and go, my version of Resident Evil that I like is better. No, the fandom is actually very bad about doing that. But I mean, God, I don't even know how to begin with this for 30 years. So,
Well, I guess kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, after the really rough patch that they had with 6, they kind of reinvented, if you will, the series, and well, not reinvented, but like reinvigorated themselves with what they did with 7 and 8 and now 9, because 7 was the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, but it was the first one that had first person elements, and then it also was the first one that started implementing the VR ones as well shortly after with things like Village, and I know RE4 had a VR version as well, if I remember correctly.
RE4 had, yeah, it had a VR version. But I'll tell you this. So 30 years, after 6, it didn't just get better, it still got actually worse. Like, they had Revelations 1 and 2, which people, like, liked, and like it was divisive,
Yeah,
mixed.
when I say
And
after
they
6, I meant mainline, of course.
okay, I was about to say, so I would just like to talk about how the series was before I get into it, because, like, it's more modern. So obviously you had your original on the PlayStation, you had your original 3.
Yep.
You had a spin-off called Survivor, or Gun Survivor, if
Mm-hmm.
you're anywhere else. And then you had Code Veronica on the Dreamcast,
Yes. Oh, the
which is,
Dreamcast, how we love thee.
love it. And then after that, you had uh, Gun Survivor 2 on the PS2 and arcade. That
Didn't
was
I believe right after Survivor 2 is when that one GBA, not GBA, GBC game came out. What was it? Gaiden?
Yeah, that was in 2000.
Yeah,
Um,
2000, 2001, somewhere on there.
yeah, somewhere around there. We have uh, an underrated classic spinoff for me, which is Dead Aim.
Ooh,
I have a lot.
yeah.
I
I've
love
seen
that one.
we went through Dead Aim a little bit.
I showed you a little bit of it. Underrated classics that people still talk about getting remade today are the Outbreak series. Those
Yes,
games are freaking awesome.
those have
Which
been spotlighted with 9.
yeah, because you play as Alyssa. She's one of the characters, which
Yeah.
is Grace's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
The Ashcrofts.
then you got 4,
Yep.
and
The
then
goat.
you have you got 5, and I don't really know of any spin-offs besides the DS remake of 1 that came out around that time.
Didn't so. All right, now this is just my brain cooking here for a second. 4 came out in '05, right?
Yep.
5 came out in
'09.
'09. Didn't Umbrella Chronicles come out between those two?
I think around 2007. Yeah, Umbrella, which is that would be cool to see that in an arcade setting. That
Yeah.
would be kind of cool. Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles, which are rail shooters.
Yeah, Darkseid came out
So
after 5.
yeah, and then around that time, you after that you had 6 that came along with Operation Raccoon City.
That
Uh,
wasn't after, that was before.
I think, yeah, was
Because
Operation Raccoon City before?
because between 5 and 6, you had, again, brain, Darkseid, you had Mercenaries 3D, Revelations 1, and Operation Raccoon City, if I remember correctly.
Somewhere in that time span, they were cooking Resident Evil games out for like with mainline and spinoff,
Yeah, because that
and
one
then
span between '09 and 2012, they were just flipping things.
yeah, you did. They really were. Then you have freaking Umbrella Corps, which is that other multiplayer one.
Umbrella Corps didn't come out until after Revelations 2, right?
I believe so. Yeah,
Which that
which
wasn't until much later after 6.
yeah, Umbrella Corps,
Because that was
and
like
then
the last one before the next
7.
mainline. Yeah,
Yeah, before they did the soft kind of reboot slash not. Well,
yeah,
I could consider it a soft reboot. Yeah, so the 7, 2 remake, 3 remake, Village,
yeah.
4
Because
remake,
before
Requiem.
the time span between entries of 6 and 7 was kind of long before they did Revelations 2, and I think it was what, 2 years?
I think so. I know the director behind Revelations. I think he did Revelations 1 and 2. Also directed 7.
Mm-hmm.
Which he came back for Requiem.
Mm-hmm.
Resident Evil. Like, I'm just I know it might be a little tangent that I went on, but I was just trying to figure out all the games and kind of list them out. Like, it's been 30 years, so there's like
It's been a long time, people.
I'm probably missing some things. I'm not even counting the fucking phone games that came out and
Oh,
all the other crazy stuff.
oh
Like,
yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot. There's books based off of the original PlayStation games. There's a movie adaptation that I may have some words about. Uh,
Oh, the movies.
I mean, I don't hate them, but I also don't like them. I think the first 2 are fine for what
Yeah.
they are.
A personal highlight that I would like to give a shout out to, just for my purposes, is all the mangas and the manhwas from Japan for 2 and 3. Those, the art, all of that is just peak. I love it. There's just perfection. If I could own all volumes of that and just have it on a shelf, I would love it.
Yeah. So 30 years. I'm just kind of all over the place with with what I want to talk about with Resident Evil. So I guess I'll just talk about how I came into the series.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I probably mentioned this on other episodes before, but I mean, how I came into the series is kind of funny because I would go over to my grandparents' house for the summer, and they got me a PlayStation 1 at the time.
Yep.
Uh, at So they would buy a handful of games from the flea market every time I'd come down, and then give them to me, just to have something to do. And so I remember getting bored of some of the games that I was playing because they were generic licensed games and racing games and stuff, and I just couldn't be bothered. And then I pick up this weird game that I pick up Resident Evil 2. That was my first one that I played, and
Yep.
realizing that I had two discs, I popped in the Claire disc first,
You were very confused, I
and
would imagine.
yeah, I was. So I popped in the Claire disc. I was like 6 years old when this happened, and I started up. I watched the cutscene. I am fucking hooked. I like what I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see the burning tanker, and I proceed to run into the fire and get devoured by zombies.
Now,
And that
now,
was my
correct
first experience.
correct me if I'm wrong, but this was also your first somewhat run-in with having actual like dubbing as well, right?
Dubbing. What do you
For
mean?
like voiceover.
Uh, no, I mean, I played plenty of games of voiceover at the time, voice acting and stuff, but it's it's my first time playing a game with tank controls, and
Ah.
God did it show. Like, so my experience with Resident Evil 2 and is like this. I watched the cutscene, I ran into the fire, watched Claire get eaten alive by zombies, and it scared the piss out of me. It fucking terrified me. I had nightmares about it for like
Mm-hmm.
ages, about zombies coming to get me. And I remember because they were very adamant about this whenever I went to my grandparents' house when I was young. I couldn't take anything that they had home with me because they wanted me to keep what I had there. But I remember one day being bored
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out, oh, wait, if I hit up on the D pad, my character moves forward no matter what, even when the camera changes. And I remember working my way through the streets, taking all kinds of damage because not being able to juke zombies and not understanding how to properly do the tank controls.
Yep.
But I remember getting to Kendo's gun shop and seeing that cut scene of him getting eaten by the zombies and stuff, and getting out there and then still dying because, I was trying to save him, and then I still got eaten by the zombies. And something clicked in my brain when that happened, and I was like, okay, I'm getting further. I get a screen further every time I die. Even though I had to restart, I didn't understand that ink ribbons would save your game quite yet because my dumbass 6-year-old brain wouldn't refuse to read.
Oh, the
So
typewriters.
so I wouldn't. I kind of kept running into that ordeal. So little by little, the days go on while I'm at my grandparents, and I get further and further. And I remember making it to the police station. I'm on danger, like I'm literally
Hobbling
all
around.
my health is gone. I'm limping around, and then I find the first aid spray that you can find by unlocking something in one of the hallways, and it brought my health back up.
Yep.
And something clicked into my brain right then and there. Whenever I was that young, I was like, "Wow, I just made it here. I just
Items.
did this." Um, and then I had to leave and go back home, but I just could not take it. I
Yep.
snuck the game with me, took it back to my house, and the PS2 was around, so I uh we got a PS2 at that point because the DVD player functionality on there was a perfect excuse as to, hey, why do you need this video game system? And you'd be like, but mommy, it has a DVD player on it, and DVD players are like $200. And then she's like, say no more or
The
say
old bait
less.
and switch, eh?
Yeah, it was. It was literally like that. I brought the game with me, but didn't have a fucking PS1 memory card, so I could not save my damn game.
Them things was
And
expensive.
they really were. But I would get further and further, and eventually I would come about a PS1 memory card secondhand. Someone would probably just give me theirs. But beating the first disc as Claire was an experience. And granted, I was playing the North American version of Resident Evil 2, which is a lot harder, a lot less ammo, a lot more zombies. And I did this as a 7-year-old at that point because, like, I would put it down. I was very young when I played it,
You were
very, very young.
7 years old, and you were in the Raccoon City trenches. That was rough
Yeah, I was.
times.
I was a young lad. I mean, barely in grade school, and I was able to go through it. And mind you, um, like, it was just an experience. It was something magical that I couldn't explain, but I didn't realize that there was an entirely different scenario with Leon. Like, I thought, okay, I beat the game again because I didn't read, dumbass little kid. Like, you would make a save data and then you would come back to the B scenario to fully beat the game. I didn't do that. I just played both Leon and Claire's A scenario as a kid. It wasn't until a few years later, whenever I would come back and actually read like a genius, that I would find out, hey, there's a B scenario.
Yep.
Hey, this is completely different.
A
Oh
goes
shit.
before B, B goes after A.
Oh shit, there's a fucking extra cutscene. Now I know how the helicopter crashed into the police station. Oh god,
Mm-hmm.
there's a giant trench coat wearing bastard chasing me. It was like a whole nother experience that I was having. And then it took me it took me a few months to go through it because,
Yep.
a little kid learning things, tank controls still weren't grasping. But I'll never forget sitting there and killing Birkin on the train for the
Oh
first
yeah.
time and seeing that. That was an experience that I was I did all that before I was like 10.
Mm-hmm.
Uh it's crazy going through a game like that whenever you're little. The tenacity that kids had back then with older video games, it was definitely a lot more of a cruel game, at least for me as a kid. Now that I'm into it, like, I understand the perfect balance of it. But it's just it's my it's my memory that, I just can't explain it. It is the most pure memory of Resident Evil that I have that got me into the series. Eventually, I would track down the first game, play it, love it, but not as much as two, just because of what two meant to me. And then I would play three on PC in my days as I got better at learning computers. I would
Was
pirate
that
a
still
lot.
on your old E machine?
Yes, it was. It was. I pirated all the Resident Evil PC ports and played them that way. I did not get to play all of
Sail the
them
high seas, eh?
authentically. Yeah. I didn't get to play them all authentically on their original platform. The only one that I played authentically and beat was like on its original platform was 2. I beat 3 on PC and I beat 1 on PC. I didn't get to play them original. I got to play them much later on their original platforms, but
Nice.
I mainly had I mainly was on PC going through them. Code Veronica is a completely different story. Oh god, the way I got Code Veronica was actually really funny. I was at my dorm school. I was at the school for the deaf and blind, and this teacher had confiscated a video game from one of their students, and they left. They graduated, and they never bothered to get it back from the teacher. And it was a copy of Resident Evil Code Veronica X
Nice.
on the PS2.
Nice.
And I ended up asking her if if I could just take it with me, because I mean, why is it just sitting here in her drawer? And that was my first experience with Code Veronica. It wasn't actually the Dreamcast version. I didn't get to play the Dreamcast version of Code Veronica until much later, which I think it looks a lot better than the PS2 version. But yeah, that's how I got Code Veronica X through a fluke accident, and I didn't even realize, because back in those days, I didn't really have a lot of access to the internet, so I didn't even know that there was another Resident Evil besides 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And that kind of tickled me. So I got a whole new series, a whole new game in a franchise I was learning to love as a kid. And
I would have loved to been in your brain to see how your thought process was like with all of these being like, I wonder which one, like, chronologically in your brain, how you were like doing this systematically, trying to figure out, like, plot points and things in your brain, not having access to the internet. I would
oh yeah,
love to see your mental breakdown of how all you processed all of that information.
God, this was before you were born too, which is it makes me
Yeah.
feel old as shit. So
Yep.
yeah, because the way I played it was I played two, I played one, I played three, and then I played Code Veronica. And fuck, I was not ready for Code Veronica. Anyone who's played that game will infamously know, and I haven't even shown Michael this yet. Code Veronica is probably the hardest in the fixed camera angle saga of Resident Evil for a very good reason. It's very unforgiving. It has a DPS check from hell halfway through the game that if you do not have the ammo for, unless you have some tenacity to dodge, I mean, you're kind of screwed. It's a soft lock. It's bad. Like, uh, it's something else. But
Early
I
2000
actually,
soft locking, eh?
yeah, but I have a lot of love for Code Veronica, despite it being one of the weirdest stories in the franchise. I don't know. I just have some really fond memories of staying up and doing the same thing with two. Learning, getting my ass handed to me, trial and erroring until I finally succeeded and then escaped with Claire. That was another just key memory I'll never get back. And then, at this point, my mom, I was getting these games and she didn't know how I was doing it. So she just started buying them for me because, she's like, those are rated M games. I'm not going to buy them for you because they're mature. Eventually, she just gave up. And anytime a new version of Resident Evil came out, she would just surprise me with it whenever she had the money and give them to me. So I ended up getting 0 and 1 remake on the
Nice.
GameCube, which is the best game in the series. I'll fight anyone on that. 1 remake is still the best.
I
Uh
cannot wait to go through that with you. I'm waiting for that.
yeah, it's crazy. Once I'm done rambling about all my stories of Resident Evil, I'll get your input. But I mean, uh I got she gave me Outbreak file 1 and 2 on the PS2. I have them physically somewhere in my room and I'd love to, find them and, get them looked at and everything.
Don't forget, I still
Um
have your original Japanese director's cut of Resident Evil as well.
that you do, that you do. I mean, I've played them all. I've literally played every mainline, every spinoff, every port, except for the N64 port of RE2 because it doesn't emulate very well, and tracking down a cartridge is something that I would very much like to do on real hardware. If
Hmm.
either that or on one of those analog 3D consoles or something. I would like to experience RE2 N64 at some point in my life.
Oh yeah.
That's the only thing I haven't done. But other than that, every version, every spinoff, I have a lot of funny stories that I could probably get into. Like I remember getting Resident Evil 3 on the PC, and they had like a demo version, and I remember trying to play it, but my e-machine after the opening cutscene would freeze on a black screen, and it would freeze. It would lock up my whole PC, and it turns out it was something to do with the game was meant to run on Windows 2000 or
Ah.
98, and it was a XP bug, and it was breaking my heart because I would try to find these runarounds to try and get this trial edition of Resident Evil 3 to run, and then eventually I pirated the game and got the game to work on PC, like, and played through the whole game with a keyboard. Like when I played the original games on PC, I played those bitches with keyboard.
I'm telling,
Um,
I can tell you this now. Playing a fixed camera angle Resident Evil with tank controls on an arrow key WASD just sounds and feels painful.
it's not as bad as you think. It's actually not as bad as you think. So the arrow keys would control, and then I would just put Z, X, C, and V as different things. So like, um, how would I put this? Oh my god. Z, or I think the space bar would be your confirm key, and it would be the you would hold down like one of the buttons and then press space to shoot. It was actually not too bad because
Although
you get
the only upside to that I could think of is your quick turn would be a little bit easier.
Yeah, you got to think of it this way. So Resident Evil mainly was used like, before the DualShock controller, you used the arrow keys, you used the D-pad
Right.
as tank controls. So it actually translated pretty well to arrow keys. Now, this was before the WASD kind of like a lot of 3D games, some of them used fucking arrow keys, which was kind of
Hmm.
gross. But yeah, it was before WASD was truly like cemented as the keyboard
Standard.
movement keys. Yeah. So it was a little different. It was a different time. But yeah, that's how I experienced the original trilogy. Keyboard on fucking PC raw. it was
Oof.
it was yeah, it was something else.
I remember,
Um
if I remember correctly, my first run in when I was a wee lad was when I forget what year it was because God, this was so long ago. But it was one many moon ago. I believe you were playing classic RE2 on I forget what system it was, but I
GameCube,
yeah, GameCube. But you were playing
more than
Resident
likely.
Evil, and we were sitting at the bar next to our old CRT where Granny used to make our milkshakes every night, and you would be playing Resident Evil.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Resident Evil 2 on the GameCube, and I still have that copy around. I'm gonna find it at some point. Because uh God, I love my mom. Whenever she was little, like I was so sad because my original copy of Resident Evil 2 was lost. The Claire disc was cracked.
Oh,
Uh yeah, it got fucked. I don't know what happened to it. But I could not play the game because I lost, like, I don't know what happened to the Leon disc, and then the Claire disc was cracked.
hmm.
So the game was unplayable for me at that point. And I remember being so sad. I did not know that Resident Evil 2 and 3 got GameCube ports. And my mom came home with Resident Evil 2 for GameCube with me. And I could not have been the happy, like,
Yep,
I was the happiest boy. Um, it is probably my favorite version of RE2,
yep.
besides the Dreamcast version. But I have a lot of sentimental value with the
See,
GameCube version
see
of
the,
it.
the funny mental imagery that I have of tiny you trying to explain to your dear mother about Resident Evil and like ESRB ratings and stuff like that to get around like all the legality of back in the day for like tiny children and the ESRB is you were just like, Mom, the M only means there are multiple games in the series, nothing else. Now go buy it.
No, no, she knew. She just didn't care. Mom was the kind of person, at least back then, she was like, well, I mean, as long as you know that it's fake, I mean, there's no reason. Like, I don't care if I get you this game, as long as you're not, like doing crazy, obscene things. She didn't care. Like,
Right.
you know, um, so it was a lot more. She was a lot more chill.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, uh, God, I have so much sentimental value with Resident Evil 2.
It's funny because
Being like,
I grew up around you playing Resident Evil a lot, so I got a lot of the passive, like, not really like, direct know-how of what was going on, but I got a lot of the like atmospherical ambiance of you doing that all the time when you used to come down every summer.
yeah, they hated me. It was actually kind of funny because they didn't realize they were the ones, your grandparents or our grandparents. God, Jesus. They didn't realize that they were the ones who actually got me into the series unknowingly by getting me that one game at their yard sale
Yep, that
or
did
flea
happen.
market deal.
There's one
So,
thing that we do, it was go hunt for video games at yard sales. That's a very fun
yep.
pastime memory of both mine and yours.
Yep. So, yeah, they were not a fan of it. No one was a fan of. They did not like me playing these types of games around you, and I'm like, you could see the pixels on this. This game doesn't look real at all. Like, come on, man. There's not even a swear. It's funny for a rated M game. There was no real swearing. Actually, I don't think a single swear was uttered in the entirety of the Resident Evil trilogy on the PlayStation. I think the worst that you're gonna hear is someone say "damn."
Yeah.
That's it. And that was probably, I think it was like one character, which is Ben in
Mm-hmm.
Resident Evil 2. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I swear. Oh, Chris, I think he might have said it too, but like I think the worst you'll ever hear is someone say "damn." So like it actually they didn't have
The
potty mouths
vulgar,
back
huh?
then. Yeah, there was no vulgarity in the original trilogy. Now you hear the modern day ones; they'll swear like a sailor when they're shooting zombies. But in the other ones, they actually barely said as like anything that would be considered vulgar at all.
Yeah,
Um,
probably one of my favorite memories of the original Rez and the Rez cast. Again, just personal preferences. Probably the Jill sandwich line. That's always going to be unforgettable for me.
which is actually funny. Um, I mean, the way that those games were dubbed was they just found people in Japan that spoke English and was like, "Hey, you want a job? Come and come and do this game for us." That's literally how it happened. But I mean, all my sentimental crap about Resident Evil aside, as a newcomer to the series, I mean, what do you think of this series? I say newcomer. You've been around here for like you've seen it.
Yep, I've been
I know
around
you.
it my whole life. Let's be real
I
here.
know you've. I know you've played. I know you've not actually seen the like gone through the credits of a Resident Evil game yourself. You've seen me do it more often, which I'm.
I know of the Resident Evil universe because of you, and I've went through basically the majority of the series, thanks to what we do. But with how like my life and like what I've been through and what I'm going through, I've never actually fully been able to sit down and do one myself. But I'm very well versed in the RE series as a whole, as you know. The one thing that I can just say is just to start off with in the blanket term of survival horror, it has definitely made me have a better appreciation for the finer things that are tied to the series, such as like mechanics, the know-how behind the mechanics, the technical aspects of what makes these games great, especially considering like what I do for a living. Not to mention just like having appreciations for textures and like old art design as a whole, and just like the tiny nuances for like text work, translation, stuff like that is just really kind of shown through for me, especially since we were planning this episode out and we were kind of going through like because Requiem just released, we realized like hey, the 30th anniversary is coming up, why don't we go back through some of the old classics, and like actually getting to sit and go through Resident Evil 2 and 3 was a very fun time, because let me tell you something, man. Those games are just such gems that, like, while yes, you can see some of their age in some aspects, you can still play them as modern as anything else these days, because, like, Resident Evils are what they are, because like they're set in stone and they were made in such a way to not be kind of changed too much, to have that sense of preservation years to come. Hell, 30 years down the line, they're still as good as they were before. You know what I mean? At least for the originals.
Yeah. So I'll I'll say this. The original series, at least the original games, may seem like they're kind of hard to come by, and a lot of newcomers to the series may not really think too highly of the originals, which makes me sad.
I adore the
They're
originals. You have given me a more profound appreciation for, again, what they're made from and what they stand for, as compared to actually going back and going through these and seeing their modern, remake counterparts. While yes, the remake counterparts have their ups and their quips that make them great, I will say what you see in the differences that we'll get into with this, of the old ones and the originals versus their remake counterparts. While yes, they make some improvements, they definitely take away a lot of the original kind of what I would consider kind of core elements in some regards, either with writing, story, what have you. Again, we'll get into it, but there are some other aspects with kind of like these comparisons that we've made over the last couple of months, going through these, like again. One that I would like to talk about is they have definitely improved upon some of their accessibility aspects, while not being perfect in some regard for every entry of the modern day. They definitely have, taken themselves and reinvigorated what they want for their player base to be able to have as as far as general accessibility and approachability, which we do appreciate. However, in doing a lot of these modern day changes, they have taken away a lot of the core shine from the originals.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I would like to consider the remakes a different interpretation. Although thanks to Requiem, the remakes are now completely 100% canon. Before I could argue,
Yeah,
well maybe this a thing, but no. Thanks to Requiem, without spoiling it, Resident Evil 2 remake is now the official canon. Besides the original Resident Evil 2,
right.
but they're still worth experiencing.
Yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
I can say this for certain people who would be willing to try them, depending on where or like where you're at or what platform you're on. You actually have more access to the original series than you think. If you're on PlayStation, then you have practically access to the entirety of the original PlayStation trilogy, along with Code Veronica, which is the PS2 version. It
Right.
may not look the best, considering that there are better versions of Code Veronica that look better, but you can still play it.
As long as you're
Um,
willing to pay for premium, because I do believe that the classics are locked behind the highest tier.
I think I think you could purchase them individually on the store. I don't know, but I do know that they are on premium. You
Yeah.
are right. On premium for PlayStation, you get access to the original PlayStation versions of 1, 2, and 3, and then Code Veronica. And I think you could play the original. You can also play the original Resident Evil 4 on the PS4 and 5. So
Yes.
you can still do that. You also got access to Resident Evil 0 and remake of
Yes.
the first version as well, which Resident Evil 1 remake,
Zero is the
if
one with Rebecca,
Rebecca,
right? Yeah.
yes. And those two in particular, if you just cannot deal with tank controls, if tank controls are just a deal breaker for you and you're not willing to learn, the remake of Resident Evil and Zero, well, technically they're ports, but you know what I mean. Those two games actually have alternate controls that give you
Yes.
traditional controls that aren't tank controls.
Right.
So if you wanted to play a fixed camera angle game and see what it's like without the tank controls, those are your best options. If you're on PC, you got, well, you're a little more open. You can play the entire franchise on PC, whether it is via emulation or you can go for the official PC ports that are
Right.
released on GOG, which I hope come to Steam.
Please,
Uh,
Steam, if you're listening, please.
well, Capcom at this point, they put Dino Crisis 1 and 2 on there,
Yes.
which is a survival horror. It's kind of, I would say, uh, like little sister to Resident Evil.
Yeah.
But
It's a now that you mentioned that brings up another point that I was gonna kind of highlight. Doesn't God, you talked about it earlier. What my mind's blanking a little bit, but wasn't Dino Crisis as a series what kind of spawned off of their Survivor originals?
no, Dino Crisis was just Shinji Mikami being like, "Hey, I'll make another survival horror game, but instead of zombies, put some fucking dinosaurs in there." I mean, it's literally
Right,
just
because
Resident Evil, but
I remember there was a connection, but I couldn't remember the specific.
they reference each other. I mean, in Resident Evil 3, you can unlock a Regina, which is the heroine in Dino Crisis. You can
Right,
unlock
right,
her. You can unlock Regina's outfit, and then in Dino Crisis, you can unlock Jill's outfit.
right.
Um, so yeah, they know each other, but yeah, I hope that comes to Steam. But on PC, you can play the original trilogy on GOG, and you can play Resident Evil 4, which ultimately I think the original Resident Evil 4 has the best version, the
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate HD version on PC. And yeah, that's readily available
Yep.
on Steam.
I got to give
Oh,
4 props for being the one to implement its accessibility forefront with its remake, because they really hammered that home quite well in my opinion.
speaking of accessibility, since we are two crippled shits who play video games, uh, for those of you with disabilities, I think the original Resident Evil especially if you have motor skills or like are really ambidextrous. The original series is pretty accessible, if I'm honest with you.
It's
So
so
let me
simplistic, it's straightforward, basically.
put it to you this way: in the original trilogy and Code Veronica and 1 and 0, you only need to worry about your character's movement. All camera work is done for you. You see what the game wants you to see.
Yep.
Is it annoying that you can't see all the enemies on screen? It can be, but that also leads to the tense atmosphere. Like you gotta like, yeah, the character can see it, and you're like, why the hell can't I see the enemy? But there are ways around it. You can use your auto aim function to have your character snap to enemies, and you can generally tell what direction they're in.
Right.
All you have to do is worry about shooting forward, up, or down. You
Yep.
only have 3 lanes of shooting. It is highly, highly accessible to everybody.
That
And
reminds me of one of my favorite moments of going back through Resident Evil 2 with you when you mentioned the up and down aiming. That one portion where you have to use that enter that password on that computer to scan the fingerprints, and you have to shoot the larva off of the desktop to use it before you're chased by that one zombie. And I remember you just losing your mind because you're emptying 2 clips trying to aim on a keyboard and you just kept missing at point blank.
yeah, I should have brought the knife and used it, but I didn't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lab, and God, if younger me would have seen that, he would have slapped me because like I would have just ran in there and just
Right.
immediately like got the fucking plants off the keyboard and typed in the code to unlock the fingerprint scanner in the
Right.
lab. But yeah, just because it's simplistic doesn't mean it's also not challenging, because it is
It has
challenging.
its moments. It has its
You still
moments.
Yeah, you still got to juke zombies, you still got to run around them and everything. But it
Zombie juking
is,
is also kind of a funny term that's been spawned off of Resident Evil.
yeah. Well, I don't think juking zombies. It's more. I started hearing that term around Call of Duty zombies, where they're like, "All right, juke the zombies, train them all, like line them in a train, line up headshots,
Yeah.
that kind of thing." Like, but yeah, the original trilogy and Code Veronica are highly doable these days if you're willing to put in the patience to learn. Tank controls, I can't convince people to like tank controls. It is what it is. But for me, it makes sense to have them, because hear me out. If you are running to the right and then your camera switches to you running to the left, if you're holding a direction and then your camera switches, you might run back the same direction you went. Imagine if you're being chased with alternate controls, and then the camera switches, and then you have to adjust your analog stick, and then you might turn and run into a zombie like an idiot. With tank controls, if you're holding up on your D-pad, you're moving forward. No matter what angle the camera angle changes to, you will continue moving in that same direction. The tank controls go well with the camera switching perspective. But I can't convince people to like it. I mean, tank controls will always be a divisive form of controlling your character.
Right.
But to me, it makes sense. And only when you have taken the time to truly master it, it might sink in with you. And yes, it will feel clunky.
Yep.
There's no way you're going to make tank controls feel natural.
And like I
It's
said, going through the series with you over these last couple months and kind of divulging myself fully into these universes, I can confirm, kind of off of what you were saying, it ties into the design art form, which I appreciate, and then also it's not so much about the control. I feel like it's more about getting you to that point where you take the time to immerse yourself, and as long as you take that time to get fully immersed, it will come to you as you go.
Yeah, exactly. If I had to make any recommendations for any newcomers to the series who would like to appreciate the classics, my recommendation is to look up the classic rebirth mods for the original trilogy. They are a mod of the Japanese versions, which are easier than the North American versions. Thanks, video game rentals. The Japanese really did not like that in the 90s, so they made our games a lot harder.
Yeah.
The Japanese versions have less health for the enemies, more ammo for you, and more saves in your ink ribbons. So if you were to play them, I would suggest looking up, how to run the Japanese classic rebirth mods. Um, that is a perfect way to get into the series.
Yes.
You get some quality of life changes that will help with a little bit of modern feel, like quick turn and a whole bunch of other stuff, tactical reloading,
Yep.
uh, along with your difficulty not being so damn like insurmountable
Through the wall.
for
Yeah.
a. So that would be my honest to God advice. Stay clear of Code Veronica until you have gone through a few of the fixed camera angles. If you really want my honest opinion about the classic games on which ones you should probably start with, I think that the first Resident Evil is a good pick just because it gives you a lot of room to run around the open mansion before you deal with zombies with your tank controls, get used to the way the movement works. It's better than Resident Evil 2 original because 2 expects you to know what you're doing. You get put right in the thick of it, right in the middle of Raccoon City with tons of zombies around you that are coming for you. So you don't have a lot of time to get used to those controls. And Resident Evil 3 is just as bad. You are literally exploded out of your apartment and you are running
Yep.
from zombies. And there's just so many of them. Um
Because that's how 3 starts. Because Jill's in her apartment. No.
yeah, Jill literally gets exploded out of her apartment.
Yeah. Because
Um
she's getting hunted for her ties to stars at that point.
mhm. If tank controls are just a no-go for you, a deal breaker, I still say you could enjoy Resident Evil 1 remake.
Yep.
That is perfect. And it has, especially with the newer ports, uh they actually have a new easy difficulty that is just perfect for people getting into the series. Now, you might scoff at like lowering difficulties and everything, but if it's something that you have to get used to, I mean, you get challenges and stuff for beating it in the harder difficulties,
Yep.
and it's pretty lenient. And especially if you just want to enjoy the atmosphere and story, you could go through one remake, no problem. I would honestly steer clear of zero unless you feel confident in your skills. Zero is what I'd like to call the bullshit game of the series. It's just I mean, it is literally it's something else. It has alternative controls, and yes, you could probably, play it right after one if you're feeling confident. But zero is definitely a divisive game. But yeah, I mean, for those of you who are just getting into the series of Resident Evil, I mean, I'd like to know where you started your journey,
For sure.
where you would what games you would like to play, or what would be your favorite Resident Evil if you have played the series. And for those of you who are, wanting to try the classics, I'd love to know your journey through that. I'd love to hear about your first time and what you did to overcome your odds, how close you scraped by without losing your head by a hunter or getting impaled by a licker or hell being,
Chased by a nemesis.
punched. Yeah, not getting tentacle
Whipped.
made fun. No, well, I without getting tentacle impaled by nemesis.
Yeah.
There you go. I would love to know how, you guys escaped that kind of ordeal. There's a lot of newcomers to the series thanks to Requiem.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're playing the newer modern games or experiencing the older games, I'd like to know people's journey through getting into Resident Evil.
Yes.
And
It's been
yeah,
quite a
that's
legacy. 30 years of greatness.
30 years, and I hope to see 30 more years. Although I'd
Oh
like to
man,
see
yeah, you and me both, dude.
uh, uh final really thoughts about this kind of uh rant slash off the walls back and forth garbledygook of nonsense. Where I would like to see the series go in the future is probably how I'd like to wrap this up. And
Yep.
quite honestly, I hope they continue doing what they're doing with this, like, honoring the survival horror legacy. And I I like Resident Evil more when you play as the everyman.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't mind Leon or Chris or Jill. You got your larger than
Your
life
classics.
badass heroes and playing as them. I don't mind it. But I like with Requiem without spoiling. I like playing as Grace a lot more than I did Leon. Not that I didn't have fun with Leon, because God,
Probably
I had fun with that Leon.
again, being able to go through Requiem, especially now that we've gone through it a couple times prior to today being the 30th anniversary of one of our favorite series, I can say, after going through all of these with you, especially with from Grace's POV and like what Requiem brings to the series for the 30th anniversary, I do like what they did for those of the for those of the original crew for that know the legacy. I like the callbacks, I love the references, and I like the new mechanic tie-ins that have callbacks to the old ones, just to see, because Grace as a protagonist, while yes she is brand new, and while yes she has her ties to the legacy of Resident Evil 4, her family tie-ins and what happens with Requiem without spoiling, I like the aspect that they kind of did. How best should I say this? Like a kind of like in a mirror aspect, how you have the Leon side of things, and you have the Grace side of things. Because Grace, kind of as a character for being the protag, is what I like to call like the protagonist, like like human embodiment of someone that is new to survival horror, someone that is new to being thrown into this, having to figure it out using your tools at your disposal, and having to implement different mechanics. That's not just guns blazing, kind of going a bit back to the roots in a way without having those fixed camera angles or things like that, while still keeping a lot of the core horror element in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they did Grace's sections in the remake, or not remake, in the new game really, really well. And that's why I like playing as Grace, because she is just an average Joe thrown into a really fucked situation. And that's at its core. Even Shinji Mikami, the creator, says that's when Resident Evil is at its best.
Yes,
It's
when it's pants shittingly just in the
when it's
core of the moment.
like in I'll bring up two since it's my favorite. It's that moment where you are on your way down to the Umbrella Lab and William Birkin jumps in front of you, and
Oh
then
yeah.
you're like, "Oh, hi." And
Oh
then
hi, yeah.
he mutates and grows like like two giant arms in front of you or something. Like, he starts like mutating and growing bigger, and his muscles start bulging,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, fuck."
Cause he does that to
Like,
you what, 4 different times?
yeah, he does.
Something like
Like,
that?
yeah, he shows up with a crowbar, then he drops it and grows like big muscles, and then he grows giant claws, and then he
Right.
turns into this dog thing, and then by the time you see him in the train, he's a giant squid.
Yeah.
Um, the grossest thing on the PS1, I swear. But yeah, that's when Resident Evil's at its best, when you are like, you're you're not certain, your ammo is low, and then this thing comes in front of you, and you're, instead of like, I
Mm-hmm.
got this, you look at it and you go, oh fuck,
Yep.
I
You
might not do
you
I might
look
not
at it
got
and you
this.
think you got a bullet in your chamber, but you hear that click and you don't have no ammo, and then you're like, oh fuck, I gotta juke it now.
Yep, that's when Resident Evil's at its best for me.
Yep.
It's when you play as the everyman,
Mm-hmm.
like the rookie cop, the FBI analyst on her, like, like, that's not really seen a lot of action.
The FBI did
Or,
Grace pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie.
dude, the real main villain, without spoilers, is the fucking boss, is her boss. Why would why would you send your fucking crew to a place that gives, like, has some serious PTSD involved?
We need someone out in the field, and we don't have any actual trained agents, so we're gonna send you, the analyst with 8 years of trauma, to the place where your trauma originated. Go have fun and figure it out and write your report.
Yeah. He's the real villain. Fuck him. And then he has the gall whenever he comes. Oh no, never mind. That's no light spoiler, but not really. But when the game is all done, you're back at your desk, and he's like, "Hey, I didn't get that report. Where's that report?" I would have been like, "Fuck you, fuck your report."
I would have taken the Requiem and I would have jammed it so far down his throat.
Yeah, no, I couldn't be bothered. But yeah, Resident Evil is at its best when you play as the everyman. Even Ethan Winters, the white bread of fucking protagonist. I got my gripes with Ethan, but at least
Ethan.
Ethan at least was the everyman. He's like, you know, just an average guy looking for his wife and his baby,
and his really fucked up baby,
his mold baby.
Yeah, his
but then
mold
again,
baby.
Light spoilers. I mean, the game's been out in a few years, but I mean, it's a weird series, guys. It's a weird series.
Resident Evil is the most fucked up, twisty, turny, bullshit roller coaster of a ride you could ever have for a span of 30 years. But goddamn, do I have to give it to Capcom and Mikami and the crew. Y'all have done something that will stand the test of time. And here's to many fucking more, because this is only the beginning and it's already been 30 years and we've only got 9 games. Please, Capcom gods, Mikami, all of you, keep doing what you're doing. And while you're at it, it's the 30th anniversary. Where's our Code Veronica remake? We want it. It deserves it. We're waiting.
This will be date this video or date this fucking podcast. I swear to God. Code Veronica probably will be announced sometime, like maybe around like Summer Games or like Tokyo Game Show this year. We'll probably see a fucking thing of Code Veronica remake right then and there and be like, well, there it is. It's the game that needs to remake the most. Yeah, it's the game that needs to remake the most. Do not remake the first Resident Evil for the second time.
Resident Evil Remake 1 is peak. Don't change it.
Don't do it. Give me Code Veronica. I'll take that. But I mean, yeah, I hope that this little disjointed rambling / reminiscing / whatever the hell this was at least somewhat interesting for those of you out there. And like I said, core Resident Evil memories, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
And for newbies, professionals, pros alike, I would love to hear your input about the series and what you like and dislike. What's your favorite games? What's your least favorite games? What bullshit boss fight is bullshit to you? Because there's plenty of them in this series. Plenty of them. I'm looking at you, Crane fight in Resident Evil 2 remake. Go fuck yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck that fight.
But yeah, as always, people, let us know down in the comments what you think. All the things, your 30th anniversary hype, your stories, we would love to hear it. And as always, you know where to find us, techandtactile.com. All of our socials are always in our link tree down below. Let us know. We appreciate you guys. Anything else you'd like to add, Cody?
No, that's really it. I think I'm going to go back to playing Requiem for the 6th time.
In Japanese or Russian?
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, that's what we like to do. But anyway, people, happy 30th anniversary. It's been a fun one. Here's to many more. Cheers, y'all. Have a good one. And as always, stay accessible.